For this week's meal prep, I'm making poblano chicken harvest bowls made up of ground chicken thighs, rice, roasted sweet potatoes, broccoli, and a garlic poblano sauce to go over the top. Each dish has about 655 calories and 48 grams of protein, and here is how you make it. Begin by cooking your rice. In this recipe, you'll need 2.5 cups or 375 grams of cooked rice. 1 cup of dry rice will yield between 2 and 3 cups of cooked rice depending on what kind you use. I ended up using 150 grams of cal roast rice in this one. I believe cal roast rice is the best kind of rice for meal prep. Next, move along to your roasted poblano sauce. For this, you're going to need 4 cloves or about 15 grams of garlic. Peel the skins away and then leave the cloves whole. You'll also need 1 small onion or half of a medium one, which is about 100 grams worth, and you're going to cut this into a large dice. Precision doesn't matter for these cuts. Wash and chop 2 medium-sized poblano peppers or 200 grams worth. Cut the seed capsule out of the center, and then roughly chop it into big pieces. These are all going to get roasted in the oven, so you can spread them out on a sheet tray, drizzle over 1 tablespoon or 15 grams of oil, a bit of salt to your liking, and then toss them all together to distribute the oil. One additional step that I like to do is place all of the peppers skin side facing up on the sheet tray. This will help them blister more easily. Place the tray into a 425 degree Fahrenheit or 218 degrees Celsius oven for 12 to 15 minutes. Next, let's prepare the vegetables. You'll need 2 medium-sized sweet potatoes or about 600 grams worth. We're going to cut these into a large dice. My goal here is roughly half-inch sized cubes, and I like to do that by cutting the potato in half long ways, and then into strips, and then across the strips to create my dice. Once that's ready, you'll need a half of a pound or 227 grams of broccoli, and cut this into small florets. I think to help this cook a little bit faster in the oven, the smaller the better here. My aim for these florets is for the crowns to be a maximum of 1 inch in diameter. The sweet potatoes will take longer to cook, so we're going to start those in the oven first. Place them all into a large bowl and then drizzle over 1 tablespoon or 15 grams of oil and then salt and pepper to your liking. Toss these around to coat with the oil and seasonings and then spread them out on a large sheet pan. They'll go in the oven at 425 Fahrenheit or 218 Celsius for about 20 to 24 minutes, flipping and turning halfway through. Now that the potatoes are in the oven, we can turn our attention back to the broccoli. Add it to your bowl with 1/2 of a tablespoon or 8 grams of oil and salt and pepper to your liking. Toss it around a coat, and then set this aside until it is ready to go on the sheet pan with the sweet potatoes. Now let's talk meat. This recipe calls for 2 pounds or 908 grams of ground chicken thighs. I like to make this myself by grinding up the chicken thighs in a food processor and then keeping them in my freezer in these Ziploc bags. Ground chicken breast can work as well, but with the lower fat content, you'll lose out on some flavor and risk the meat drying out. All we're doing to cook the chicken is putting it in a skillet and letting it brown up. So add in 1 tablespoon or 15 grams of oil, and then add your chicken to the center. Spread it around in the bottom of the skillet to get as much chicken touching the heat as possible. This will help with browning. Then you can season the top lightly with salt and pepper and add in 2 teaspoons or 6 grams of garlic powder and 2 teaspoons or 2 grams of dried oregano. Allow this chicken to cook for a couple of minutes before you break it up to allow the chicken to get good browning on the underside. This is a key step when cooking any kind of ground meats. The browning is what's going to bring more flavor to this chicken. Missing this step is going to lead to colorless, bland tasting meat. Once I get it flipped over to the other side, then I break it up into smaller pieces. I'll continue cooking this until no pink remains. We're like what? Almost 4 minutes into the video at this point, and not a single one of you have told me that my rice cooker has been unplugged the whole time? What the funk? I thought you had my back. While the chicken was finishing up, my vegetables had finished, so I pulled those from the oven and set them aside to rest and cool. The sweet potatoes were also about halfway done at this point, so I pulled them from the oven, tossed them around to flip to the other side, moved them to 1/2 of the sheet pan, and added the broccoli to the free side to then finish in the oven. For the potatoes to finish up and the broccoli to cook, this should take an additional 10 to 12 minutes. By the time I had completed tending to my vegetables, my chicken had finished cooking, so I broke it up into small pieces and removed it from the heat. And back to the sauce. The exterior of my peppers got some good blistering while they were in the oven, so the next step is to remove the skin. This isn't a requirement. You don't have to do this. My rule is if it's easy to peel off, I do it. If it takes too much effort to get it off some of the pieces, it's staying on. This does not need to be perfect. A trick some people use to make this easier is to place them into a bowl when they're fresh out of the oven and covering that with plastic wrap for about 10 to 15 minutes. And then that should make the skins come off easier. In my experience, it didn't make a difference. So once you get all the skin off or you just get tired of peeling it, everything's going to be put into a blender. So I placed the container over a scale and I added all my peppers, onions, and garlic, and I followed that up with about 5 or 6 sprigs of cilantro, or roughly 7 grams worth. Next is 1/4 of a cup or 135 grams of plain non-fat Greek yogurt and 3 tablespoons or 45 grams of lime juice. Slap on the lid, toss it on the motor, and blend everything in the container until it is smooth. Once it has reached this point, give it a taste test and adjust the flavor with salt or lime juice as needed. If your sauce feels a bit thick, you can also add some water to help thin it out. I wanted my sauce to be in between a pesto and a salsa for consistency. Next, I laid out 5 metal ramekins to place into each of my containers, and I divided my roasted poblano sauce evenly between them. I believe these ramekins are 2 ounces in size. If you don't have anything like this to store your sauce in, you can just leave it in the fridge and then add it to your meals after you reheat. Once my potatoes and broccoli had developed the color I was looking for, I pulled them from the oven and allowed them to cool a bit before plating. Now that my rice is done after I finally plugged it in, we can go back and tend to it. Fluff it up, season it with a bit of salt and lime juice to taste, and then it's ready to go. Now it's time to plate. This recipe is going to make 5 servings, so lay out 5 of your meal prep containers and divide the ingredients evenly between each of them. Each dish gets a half of a cup or 75 grams of cooked rice, 1/5 of the broccoli, sweet potatoes, and chicken, and then 1 ramekin of your roasted poblano sauce. I wanted to keep this meal around 650 calories, but if you wanted to increase that, the easiest way to do it is by simply adding more rice. Bump it up to a full cup if you want a higher volume meal. I know ground chicken can sometimes be hard to find in stores, so if you need to substitute with 93.7 ground turkey, that would be a good replacement. Each one of these poblano chicken harvest bowls with no toppings as shown here has about 570 calories and 44 grams of protein. After I reheat these, there are a couple of toppings I like to add on. I'll show you those in a second. The meals will last for up to 5 days in the refrigerator. Once they've cooled down and are done steaming, you can toss on the lids and then move them into the fridge for storage. I'll reheat these meals using the microwave. First, obviously removing the metal ramekin of sauce, as if you put this in the microwave, you might create a bomb that puts you on a government watch list. Anytime I reheat chicken using the microwave, I like to reduce the power of the microwave to around 50% to help prevent the chicken from drying out. Then once my meal is reheated, I can stir up my sauce and drizzle that over the top. Additionally, for some textural variation, I like to add about a tablespoon or 10 grams of roasted pumpkin seeds, and then for some more flavor, about a tablespoon or 10 grams of crumbled feta cheese. With these 2 additional toppings, it brings our caloric total to about 655 calories and 48 grams of protein. If you wanted the easy way out or a shortcut method, you could skip making the roasted poblano sauce and just buy a jar of salsa from the store. You'll lose out on some protein since the sauce is made from Greek yogurt, but you will save a little bit of time. Poblano peppers are not spicy, so if you are wondering about the heat level on this, it's non-existent. That being said, if you wanted to add some, I would include a serrano pepper during the roast. This meal has a decent amount of prep work involved with cutting the vegetables and making the sauce, but the actual cooking portion is quite easy. The ground chicken just needs browning, and then everything else goes in the oven and it doesn't take much of your attention or effort. The full written version of this poblano chicken harvest bowl recipe with all the ingredients and instructions listed is on mealprepmanual.com, and that is linked below in the description. For more meal prep recipes to try out, check out these 2 videos on screen now, or head to my website for the full library. Okay, bye.